Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Esoterica / ancient lore. Today we are diving back into The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary by Carl Eckhart Hausen. We are up to letter 4. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text as we explore it. It's not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along in our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you were unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above and the box down below, along with the original source material, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I stand where I do. A particular note again today is almost certainly going to be the unconventional Bible study, as well as the infinite integrations system. Both of those have proven to be relevant as we've gone along, so I am assuming that they will be once more. So let us dive into The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary by Carl Eckhart Hausen, letter 4. As infinity in numbers loses itself in the unit, and as the innumerable rays of a circle are united in one single center only, it is likewise with the mysteries. Their hieroglyphics and infinite number of emblems have the object of exemplifying but one single truth. He who knows this has found the key to understand everything all at once. There is but one God, but one truth and one way which leads to this grand truth. There is but one means of finding it. I disagree with that heartily. Right? There is but one God, that I absolutely do agree with. There is but one truth, and that is true. But there is more ways to find the truth than there is the truth, right? There is many different paths which lead to the same end, and so I disagree heartily with that, and if that is confusing to you, you should definitely check out the Bible study. He who has found this way possesses everything in its possession, all wisdom in one book alone, all strength in one force, every beauty in one single object, all riches in one treasure only, every happiness in one perfect felicity. And the sum of all these perfections is Jesus Christ, who was crucified and who lived again. And again, I disagree heartily with that, and I expound upon that in the Bible study. There is a reason why I direct you there. Now, this great truth, expressed thus, is, it is true, only an object of faith, but it can become also one of experimental knowledge, as soon as we are instructed how Jesus Christ can be or become all this. This great mystery was always an object of instruction in the secret school of the invisible and interior church. This great knowledge was understood in the earliest days of Christianity under the name of Disciplina Arcana. From this secret school are derived all the rites and ceremonies extant in the outer church, but the spirit of these grand and simple verities was withdrawn into the interior, and in our day it is entirely lost as to the exterior. That is to say that God did not relay perfectly the way that he wanted it to be. Right, that's what's implied there, right? If the great mystery was always an object of instruction in the secret school, and this great knowledge was understood in the earliest days of Christianity, then it would be impossible for such to fall off. If it was the divine will that these things should be revealed in the control systems, then it would have been revealed in the control systems. These things would be fundamental knowledge to everyone who proclaimed to follow Christ. But despite the fact that that is not true, people still hold on to the control system. It has been prophesied long ago, dear brothers, that all which is hidden shall be revealed in these latter days. That's where I'm at. But it has also been predicted that many false prophets will arise, and the faithful are warned not to believe every spirit, but to prove them if they really come from God. 1 John 4:5. The apostle himself explains how this truth is ascertained. He said, "Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit which confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. and every spirit which confesseth not is not of God. That is narcissism in its best implications, right? That is the fulfillment of narcissism, right? Of course this is true, and if you doubt that in any way, then you are not of God. And that is simply how it is. No, actually it's not. Actually, what can happen is you can find God wherever you are. If you are somehow abandoned upon a island and there is no one there but you, right? You are a baby, and somehow, miraculously, you happen to live, right? You grow up to adulthood, and then you practice these things that I talk about here. You can find God, completely separated from any of the control systems, and effect change in your life thereby. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God, the fruits will bear thereof. That was what this should have said. Not that which confesseth Jesus Christ is come in the flesh as of God. No. I know that is something that sets me apart from most people who are seeking. This is a channel for those who are seeking, not for those who think they know, right? I think I know. That is awfully heady, Pitt. But the things that I talk about here have practical application. The last video will explain to you more fully, and by all means go back and check that out. But I have effected healing in my own life through the things that I am doing and receive the blessings of Spirit. These things allow me to believe that I am on the right path. I may not be. I could be completely wrong. Maybe it is confessing this man who walked the earth. It makes all the difference. And everybody that was here before him, well, we got an exception for that. And those people who haven't quite heard about it, well, we've got an exception for that too. But, the rule is still there. No. I know that steps on toes. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize. That is to say, the Spirit who separates in him the divine and human is not from God. That is in part, right? We are all divine. Not God, but a tiny little bitty, tiny sliver of God. A small, minuscule separation from the oneness. We are all here incorporated, right? If you're listening to this, you are here incorporated. But that divine spark, the part that makes the decisions, the soul which resides inside of your temple and allows the Spirit to do its thing, that is you, right? You are equal to Jesus. That doesn't mean that you're holy. That doesn't mean that you can perform miracles. That means that spark that is inside of you is the same spark that was inside of him. Now, he had more dedication than you. He had more prayer, fasting, and meditation than most of us do. Many of the churches will tell you that meditation is evil, that it is of the demons, that it is something that will hold you back, and that is not true. Jesus told you to meditate. You should be doing that. He told you the path by which he took, and he didn't tell you he was divine. Other people placed that upon him, and we talk about that in the Unconventional Bible Study, so I'm not going to unpack that here. But there is absolutely salvation outside of any man that has ever walked upon the earth. That is true. You can find God no matter where you are, because he will find you wherever you are. We confess that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh, and hence the Spirit of truth speaks by us. But the mystery that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of wide extent and great depth. No, it's not. It's quite shallow. And in it is contained the knowledge of the divine human. And it is this knowledge that we are choosing today as object for our instruction. As we are not speaking to neophytes in matters of faith, it will be much easier for you, dear brothers, to receive the sublime truths which we will present to you. As without doubt you have already chosen as object for your holy meditation various preparatory subjects. Religion, considered scientifically, is the doctrine of the reunion of man separated from God to man reunited to God. Hence, its sole object is to unite every human being to God, through which union alone can humanity attain its highest felicity, both temporally and spiritually. This doctrine, therefore, of reunion is of the most sublime importance, and being a doctrine, it necessarily must have a method by which it leads and teaches us. The first is the knowledge of the correct means of reunion, and secondly, the teaching. After the knowledge of the correct means, how these means should be suitably coordinated to the end. This grand concept of reunion, on which all religious doctrine is concentrated, could never have been known to man without revelation. It has always been altogether outside the sphere of scientific knowledge. But this very ignorance of man has made revelation absolutely necessary to us. Otherwise, we could, unassisted, never have found the means of rising out of this state of ignorance. I do not necessarily disagree with this, right? It is only through revelation that we understand the things by which we know, right? You can receive information and not understand it, but you do not receive revelation without an understanding. It may not be a full understanding, but it is at least an understanding. If you are seeing something, you knowing that there is something extra. I do believe that there has been revelations. I do not necessarily discount entirely what Moses did, although I do in great part, again, the Bible study. I do not discount entirely Buddha. I do not discount entirely Muhammad. I do not discount entirely Jesus Christ, Joshua. But I do not hold the control systems. Right? I believe that there was revelation revealed to them, and they did their best to relay that revelation. What happened after their deaths, mostly, has been attached to them in ways that are not necessarily true or correct. And so I hold great problems with many things inside of the revelations, but not that there was a revelation and that all of our understanding comes from a revelation. The things that I talk about here, the various things that are in these playlists, are things that have been revealed to me. So of course I can't discount your revelation because I have had one. We don't have to agree. I am not here to convince you. I am here to relay. It is possible to find God without Jesus. That is an indisputable, immutable fact. And just because you don't believe it does not mean that it is untrue. Revelation entails the necessity of faith in revelation, because he who has no experience or knowledge whatsoever of a thing must necessarily believe that he wishes to know and have experience. If faith fails, there is no desire for revelation, and the mind of man closes by itself, its own door and road for discovering the methods revealed by revelation only. As action and reaction follow each other in nature, so also, inevitably, revelation and faith act and react. One cannot exist without the other, and the more faith a man has, the more will revelation be made to him of matters which lie in obscurity. That I believe. It is true, and very true, that all the veiled truths of religions, even those heavily veiled ones, the most difficult ones to us, will one day be revealed and justified before a tribunal of the most rigid justice. But the weakness of men, the lack of penetration in perceiving the relation and correspondence between physical and spiritual nature, requires that the highest truths should be imparted gradually. The holy obscurity of the mysteries is thus on account of our weakness, because our eyes are enabled only gradually to bear their full and dazzling light. In every grade at which the believer in revelation arrives, he obtains clearer light, and this progressive illumination continues the more convincing because every truth of faith so acquired becomes more and more vitalized, passing finally into conviction. Hence, faith is founded on our weakness, and also on the full light of revelation, which will, in its communication with us, direct us according to our capabilities to the gradual understanding of things, so that in due order the cognizance of the most elevated truths will be ours. These objects, which are quite unknown to human sense, are necessarily belonging to the domain of faith. Man can only adore and be silent, but if he wishes to demonstrate matters which cannot be manifested objectively, he necessarily falls into error. Man should adore and be silent, therefore, until such time arrives when these objects in the domain of faith become clearer, and therefore more easily recognized. Everything proves itself by itself as soon as we have acquired the interior experience of the truth revealed through faith. So soon as we are led by faith to vision, that is to say, to full cognizance. In all time, have there been men illuminated of God who had this interior knowledge of the things of faith demonstrated objectively, either in full or partly, according as the truths of faith passed into their understanding of their hearts. The first kind of vision was called divine illumination. The second was entitled divine inspiration. The inner sensorium was opened in many to divine and transcendental vision, called ecstasy, because this inner sensorium was so enlarged that it entirely dominated the outer physical senses. In part, yes, and in part, not quite. The inner sensorium we have talked about, right? That is the inner workings of the temple. That is the 7 internal chakras and the 1 external chakra that you have access to. That is the sensorium. That is where you feel the light. That is where you move the light. That's where you understand the light. That is where you come to the understanding of God through revelation in the process. Yes. The ecstasy part of this, you do feel a measure of ecstasy while you're doing this. It is something happy. It is something filling. It is something beyond contentment and into the realm of happiness, right? Ecstasy. It is a entire body feeling, but it doesn't necessarily entirely dominate the outer physical senses. You still feel the air, right? You still hear the birds. You still have the smell. Those senses are still there if you are doing it correctly. If you are unconscious in the middle of it, you are doing it wrong. If you do not have an awareness of the things outside, you're doing it wrong. You are either misaligned in intentionality or in practical application. One or the other. You should still be able to sense all of the things outside of you. You should be able to do this with your eyes open, right? It helps to close your eyes, to concentrate, to do the inner work, to move the light according to your inner senses. That helps. But once you have become more practiced in it, you can do it walking down the road. I do every single day, right? I say the prayer. If it is not raining so hard that I cannot possibly go out with my dogs, right? I go out and I say my prayer. I do a prayer walk, and part of that is meditation every single day. I correct my auras or my chakras every single day. I go at least once a day, but sometimes 2 or even 3 times a day. That doesn't mean that they are necessarily bad each time. It's just steps that I take to recognize the process, to intentionally move the spirit to the places where it needs to be. It does not dominate the physical senses. The physical senses are still there, and so that is just something I wanted to clarify. Ecstasy is definitely a part of it. When you are doing it and doing it correctly, it's an elating feeling. You feel happiness, contentment, you feel joy, you feel love. Those things are real. But you also still feel the other things, if you're doing it right. But this kind of man is always inexplicable, and he must remain such always to the man of mere sense, who has no organs receptive to the transcendental and supernatural. That is true too. Those who have not attempted and have not tried will not understand. They will mock, they will laugh at you and all of that, and that is part of it. You better be accepting of it if you're wanting to walk this path. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, and he cannot know them, because they are spiritually judged. 1 Corinthians 11:14. An example, because his spiritual senses are not open to the transcendental world, so that he can have no more objective cognizance of such world than a blind man has of color. Thus, the natural man has lost these interior senses, or rather, the capacity for their development is neglected almost to atrophy. That is true, and that's what I just said. Thus, mere physical man is, in general, spiritually blind. That is true. One of the further consequences from the fall, and that is not. It is an intentional thing, right? We are here voluntarily. That is a firm belief that I hold, and you don't have to agree, but it is something that I firmly believe. The soul, being eternal, was somewheres prior to being here, and it will be somewheres after here. Now, you may disagree on where it came from and where it goes. I believe that it came from source and it's returning to source. That is the doctrine that I am here for. Other people believe other things. Some people believe that you are condemned to hell, and if you go back through Dante's Inferno, which is included in the Ancient Lore playlist, you will see that mostly what is being described there is the hell that you create, or the heaven that you create. You can, after you lose access to the temporal, right, the temple is gone, you can remain. You can energetically invest yourself into this existence to the point where you do not return to source and you become a disincorporated spirit. That is a thing. But that is something that is not common. You can believe that there is an eternal punishment for those who fail to meet the standards which are enacted by the various control systems, and you are free to do that, but I do not believe that. I believe that we are here to learn lessons. That because the soul is eternal, and it was somewheres first, and it will be somewheres later, that when we were where we were, somewheres first, where I believe is with union with God, we, as the individualized piece that's about to take possession of this temple, meet with the other individualized pieces that are taking possession of their temple, and we agree to teach each other lessons. Some of those lessons are great. Some of those lessons are definitely not great. Grief, pain, struggle, they're all part of it. Happiness, love, elation, those are part of it too. You are meant to feel these things. The further consequences of the fall is the part where I'm taking exception. I don't believe that it was a fall, right? We are here intentionally. We decided as an eternal being, a individualized piece of God, to have this existence inside this temple. And because we chose that, we forget that we chose. Right? It's not an unintended consequence. It's not a further consequence. It is an intricate part of why you're here. If you made the decisions to have these tests and you knew the tests were coming, then you could more easily prepare for the tests. It's not meant to be easy. You are meant to take the hard road. You are meant to overcome the struggles of the flesh. You are meant to do those things. That is part of the lesson. The lesson is always to choose love. It is always to choose light. It is always to choose not doing wrong to other people. That is always meant to be the lesson. But you can decide otherwise because you don't remember that the lesson is there. So it's not a consequence of the fall. It is an intrinsic part of the experience that you don't remember the spiritual until you earnestly seek it out. That's why you are born with your third eye blinded. Man is then doubly miserable. He not only has his eyes blindfolded to the sights of high truth, but his heart also languishes a prisoner in the bonds of flesh and blood, which confine him to animal and sensuous pleasures, to the hurt of more elevated and genuine ones. Therefore, we are slaves to concupiscence, to the domination of tyrannical passions, and therefore do we drag ourselves as paralyzed sufferers, supported on crutches. The one crutch being the weak one of the mere human reason, and the other sentiment. The one daily giving us appearance instead of reality, the other making us constantly choose evil, imagining it to be good. This is, therefore, our unhappy condition. And the rest of this paragraph is why I stopped at the beginning of the paragraph, right? Drag ourselves, paralyzed sufferers, supported on crutches. That is victim mentality. That is choosing to see the hardship as not the lesson, but instead just something that is, right? Well, we have to suffer through this. Well, yeah, kind of, but it is an intentional thing. And then if you can recognize the intentionality of the lesson in the lesson, then you don't just drag yourself along. My life's not easy, but it is enjoyable. It's not without pain, as we've talked about in the last video, right? Where the healing took time, it took pain, it took intentionality. It was something I had to choose. Spirituality is the same, but because you have the option to choose it, it is not a sentence passed upon you, right? It is something that you voluntarily engaged in. The trials are for a reason, right? We've gone into that before, but this terminology here is every bit as harmful as some of the control systems that are using the absolute wrong way of going about things, right? Animal sacrifice is 100% wrong all of the time. If there is an acceptance of an animal sacrifice, it is by the wrong entity 100% of the time. And so there are trials, but they are not overbearing, right? They are not dragging you. They are not paralyzing you. They are something you are meant to understand and overcome, and that can be difficult. But it is not an unhappy condition unless you choose to make it so, right? And lack of knowledge is choosing to make it so. Not directly, right? This information that I have found is freely available to everybody, and I'm freely relaying it to everybody, but not everybody's going to pick up on it. Not everybody who is in the control system are unhappy. Many of them are perfectly content, doing good works, actually bearing the fruit of the Spirit. That happens. It is just exceedingly rare. This is not an unhappy condition. It is merely something with which we are supposed to go through and we are supposed to overcome. Nothing is making you choose evil, though. You already know that you were doing wrong. When I was heavily involved in criminality, I knew it wasn't right. Even outside of the moral control system things, right? I knew in my soul some of the things I was doing was absolutely wrong. And you know that too. It is not making you choose it. You're choosing it because it is pleasurable. Well, that's not a making it happen. That is you choosing that. And learning that you are choosing that is very much an important step, right? Learning that even if you are ignorant, you are still choosing is an important step. Men can only be happy when the bandage which intercepts the true light falls from their eyes, and when the fetters of slavery are loosened from their hearts. That is true, right? You are not enslaved. The blind must see, the lame must walk, before happiness can be understood. Not necessarily. But the great and all-powerful law to which the felicity or happiness of man is indissolubly, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that word, attached, is the one following: man, let your reason rule over your passions. For ages has man striven to teach and to preach, with, however, the result, after so many centuries, of but the blind always leading the blind. For in all the foolishness of misery into which we have fallen, we do not yet see that man wants more than man to raise us from this condition. Prejudices and errors, crimes and vices only change from century to century. They are never extirpated from humanity. Reason without illumination flickers faintly in every age. In the heavy air of spiritual darkness, the heart, exhausted with passions, is also the same century after century. Right. Morality changes. That is a truth. There was a time when polygamy was a perfectly acceptable thing within most of the control systems. That has gone away in large part, but that doesn't mean that it was entirely wrong. I know somebody's like, wait, what? Some people are built differently than others. That is one of the things that I try so very hard to show people. You may be geared towards a polygamous relationship. Now, this comes with caveats. Polygamy should be a loving, understanding, reciprocal relationship for all parties involved equally. That is exceedingly hard to do. It is hard enough to find one person with which you want to share your life and to be open and honest, to engage with and discourse with frankly, to share yourself with completely, to share your things with completely. That is hard to do. Most people do not achieve it. You can look at our divorce rates, and you can definitely see that. You can look at the fact that married people maintain separate bank accounts and see the exact same thing. Most people have a hard time with that. But you are meant to share your life with someone. For 3 people to be able to do that is really tough. Like really tough. It is tough for 2 people to do that, right? To share with one other person. But to share that one other person with another person and all the things with another person, that can be tough. It has to be a very genuine thing from all parties involved, and most of the time it is not. Most of the time those relationships fall apart with less than beneficial results for everybody involved. That is not because it is intrinsically bad. That's a morality issue. It is because it is hard to do and enact in reality. And so prejudices and errors, crimes and vices change from century to century. That is true. They are never extirpated from humanity. Reason without illumination flickers faintly in every age. Yes. In the heavy air of spiritual darkness, the heart, exhausted with passions, is also the same century after century. That is more true than false. There is but one who can heal these evils, but one who is able to open our inner eyes, but one who can free us from the bonds of sensuality. I believe that, but I do not believe this next sentence. This one is Jesus Christ, the Savior of man, the Savior, because he wishes to obliterate from us all the consequences which follow as a result from the blindness of our natural reason, or the errors arising from the passions of ungoverned hearts. You are not meant to be separated from accountability. You are not meant to be blindly forgiven with no change of heart. You are not meant to do that. You are meant to feel contrition when you have violated trust. You are meant to feel humiliation when you have done the same thing. You're meant to feel those consequences so that you will correct those actions. Going to an external source other than God himself is an attempt to assuage that. Taking and casting upon someone else your nature and receiving redemption from that is going to be wrong. Going to God, the one, by himself and asking for your heart to be changed and for you showing the actual contrition is a different thing. Now, some people can probably achieve that through the intervention. That's why I say that some people need the control systems. But again, it is exceedingly difficult. If you walk down the aisle and you say the sinner's prayer and then you go to work and you cheat your client, you're not saved. If you go to work and you are browsing on the internet when you are supposed to be productively engaged for your employer, you are not acting out the thing, right? You are not doing what you were called to do. You are meant to toil. That means that you're going to have a job. You are going to have to do that, right? That job may be entirely you. You may have your own plot of land with all of the resources that you need to exist on that land. You're still going to have to harvest it. You're still going to have to store it. You're still going to have to prepare it. You're still going to have to toil, even if everything is provided for you. There is going to be action that you have to take, and nobody else can do it for you. Even if it is so simple as putting the food into your own mouth, you are going to have to take action. It is not enough to give that to someone else. Now, I believe that the one is God. That is the one. It is Him separated from any human, ever. God did not incorporate inside of Himself. It's one of the things that are restricted from Him. In the same way that He doesn't understand grief, because He does not grieve you. When you die, you return to Him. In that same way, it is not someone else that can take that away from you. It is only you that can give that away. It is only you that can accept the new way. And while it is possible to go up and say the sinner's prayer and have a change, it is again exceedingly rare. Very few men, beloved brothers, have a true and exact conception of the greatness of the idea meant by the redemption of man. Many suppose that Jesus Christ the Lord has only redeemed or rebought us by His blood from damnation, otherwise the eternal separation of man from God. But they do not believe that He could also deliver all those who are bound in Him and confide in Him from all the miseries of this earth plane. I refer you to the speech that we just had. Right? You are meant to feel things. Right? You are not meant to be exempt. You are not meant to be delivered from the physical trials. You can overcome them, yes, by mental alchemy, which we talk about in the Hermetic playlist, because there is a lesson in the toil. There is a lesson in the trial. There is a lesson in the hardship. You can overcome them. You can decide, I am not going to let this affect me so that I become negative because of it. I haven't told the story for a while, so I'll go ahead and reveal it and reiterate it here. I was molested as a child. Part of that person's lesson was to be tempted by me. That doesn't mean that it's my fault. It means that we had an agreement that there would be temptation and that I would be that temptation. He was supposed to choose not to do it, but he chose to do it. Because of that action, his life went in one direction that I am not even aware of, but mine went in a different one. Because of his choice, mine spiraled. But I could have taken that and went a different way with it, but I was a child. I didn't know any better. As I have matured as an adult, I can see the lessons that I should have learned from that. That is more explained in detail in the origin story, where did Pig come from? I had an exceedingly difficult life as a child. There was a lot of trials. There's a lot of things that I've had to accept, and you can call the things that I say here as a rationalization of it. But because of those particular trials, I have been able to relate to people in a way that other people can't, right? If you've never been molested, you can try to understand, but it's not something that you really get. If you've not been physically beaten, then you don't really understand what it's like to have your authority figure make you bleed. If you've never been emotionally abused, then you don't understand what it's like to have the person that you love call you an idiot, right? You don't understand those things in the way that people who have been through them do. And so that is part of the lesson, right? That was me taking these negative experiences and turning them into love for my fellow man. It is me relaying to you, yes, I understand, on a fundamental level, the things which you have been through. That is enough to be the entire lesson, but there have been others involved in it, right? Learning to overcome physical pain, learning to overcome my own mind. That's all part of it. It's not something that I meant to be taken from. And you can do the not work, or you can choose to do the work. Either way, there is a path for you. I believe that more than they do, right? I believe that there is a path that will find you. I believe that everybody can come to God. Not everybody will, because not everybody is on the same path. And sometimes you need more lessons, even a continuation into the next life. I believe that. But I don't believe the Hindus, right? I don't believe that you are born in a caste and that you can't change it. I don't believe that the sins of your previous life are what hold you back. It is the necessity of needing to learn something from it, and you missed it. And so you choose to come back to learn it again. I'm hoping I learned all of these lessons and I don't have to go through it again, right? But I can. And if I do, hopefully I wind up in the same spot. This is information that is hard for people to get, right? The molestation one in particular, I normally get a couple of pushbacks on. It's like, I didn't choose it. I know you didn't choose it. I didn't say you chose it here. You chose it there, though. And that's different. And you didn't even choose for the thing to happen. You chose to be the temptation. I chose to be the temptation. That's how I look at it. You don't have to. That's perfectly fine. You can be upset with me. That's fine. Leave a dislike down below and be blessed elsewhere. I'm here to reveal to you truths, even when they hurt. It is not without love. I'm loving on you. I have been through this. I have worked through this. I have a path. It may not be your path, and that is fine. But no man, by his blood, saved you from damnation. None. Not a single one ever in the history. No sacrifice of any living thing has ever been the redemption for you. No killing of a goat ever saved you from damnation. No killing of a pigeon ever saved you from damnation. No killing of an ox ever saved you from damnation. No killing of a man ever saved you from damnation. It is the exact same thing. Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. He is the deliverer from all human wretchedness. Okay, so in the places where Jesus has been accepted, there's no wretchedness? Is that what you're telling me? He has delivered you from all human wretchedness? He has redeemed us from death and sin. Has that happened? Has that been enacted in real life? I'm asking honestly here. I want to know. You tell me. Has it been evidenced? Has all human wretchedness ceased because of the Church of Jesus Christ? Any of them, like the various myriad of denominations who all argue within themselves as to what is correct and not. Has any of them led to the end of all human wretchedness? No. What I am doing here is not going to end human wretchedness. It is going to end you finding wretchedness in your existence. You are not eternally damned. It doesn't matter what you did. If you commit the atrocities, that doesn't mean that when you die, everything is just hunky-dory and perfect, right? But you return to God. You don't go to hell. Even if you have not come to the saving knowledge of Jesus the Christ, even if you haven't come to God himself, you still return. But when you return, you get made clear to you where you have been in error, all the way down the line. And you understand the lessons that you picked up and the lessons that you missed. And then it's a matter of, okay, are you ready to go back and learn the lessons? Because that is part of the process. I don't believe that you receive full reunification, the annihilation of the part that is you. I don't believe that happens until all the lessons are learned. I do not expect that I will learn all the lessons, right? I'm probably going to return, but it will be a choice. And that is something that I am pretty clear upon. How could he be all that if the world must languish perpetually in the shades of ignorance and in the bonds of passions? It has already been very clearly predicted in the prophets of the time that the redemption of his people, the first Sabbath of time, will come. I don't know that that has been made clear, right? There is something coming, and that is made clear. The prophets all had a fairly accurate description of the things that will return to the best of their understanding. But the problem with prophecy is that you can only interpret prophecy according to the things that you know, right? The explanation I give is that if I was to sit Isaiah right here beside me, he would have no way to describe the things that we are looking at. There's a screen here, there's a screen over here, there's lights, there's a camera, there's a microphone, and he wouldn't know what any of those things were. This would be a talking rock, right? There was some screen, and it was bright, and it gave light, and this man was able to look at it and see and read from the scroll that was on the screen. That would be the understanding that he would have. That somehow my voice was captured, but he wouldn't know that it's this microphone. Like, he wouldn't even understand the concept that I'm recording myself for you to view over there. Now, if he was here with me for a year, and then we set him right here next to me, he could do all of the things. He has the understanding by which to interpret them. But if we was to pull him from then and set him right here, he would not. He could interpret it according to what he knows, but he could not interpret it past that. And so, prophecy always comes through the lens of what the prophet knows. That is one of the things that we expounded upon in the unconventional Bible study. We went through Isaiah, we went through Ezekiel, we went through Jeremiah. We talked about these things then. You will understand according to the knowledge that you have. So, the redemption of his people, the first Sabbath of time will come as the understanding that they had, not necessarily what would happen. There is a event that I am firmly convinced will be a thing, but I can be wrong of it. I see the evidences of it in the prophecy. The parts that they got right, describing the things that would happen, we talked about. The 12,000 year disaster cycle, which is one of the videos on this channel, expounds upon that particular event, what I believe will happen. I believe that will be the end times. It will be the resetting to the new. It's not really the end. Many people will be harvested, yes, but many people will return, and we will have something on the other side that is different than what we have here. Part of what I am doing here is hoping to enable enough people with this knowledge that when that event happens, this knowledge will survive, and we can do this without all of the control systems being reenacted, right? Not falling back to animal sacrifice. That's part of what I am doing here. So, the redemption is through the understanding of the prophets, and almost all of the prophecies have been misinterpreted completely through self-insertion. What does that mean? We will use the Emmanuel, right? I'm pretty sure it was Isaiah. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it was Isaiah who made the prophecy of Emmanuel. I'm pretty sure. And what he was doing was talking to the present king in his time, and he said, I want you to make a demand of God that will be proof. And the king says, no, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to tempt God. And so Isaiah says, okay, I will. Before this time has passed, this maiden will give birth to a child. Not a virgin, but a maiden. Will give birth to a child, and his name will be Emmanuel. And before that child is old enough to eat curds and whey, these things will come to pass. And it did. And yet somehow that got read into being a prophecy of the Messiah. Well, there was no mention of in the future in that. You can go back in the future and read yourself into that, but Isaiah didn't. Isaiah said, this child will be named Emmanuel. Like before it comes, this woman is going to be, like he even pointed her out and married her. It was his child. He said, this woman will conceive and bear a child, and before it is old enough, these things will happen. And then they went into captivity. It happened. The child was named Emmanuel. And yet, somehow, we have taken that and extrapolated from that there would be this future guy who would come and do these things. That is not what the prophecy said. That is a misinterpretation. That is a self-insertion. There was no prophecy of a virgin birth. That throws a very big wrench into a couple of the Gospels. Long ago, we have to acknowledge this most consolatory promise. But the want of the true knowledge of God, of man, and of nature has been the real hindrance which has always obstructed our sight of the great mysteries of the faith. Yes, you must know, my brothers, that there is a dual nature. One, pure, spiritual, immortal, and indestructible. The other, impure, material, mortal, and destructible. That is true. The pure nature was before the impure. The latter, this latter, originated solely through the disharmony and disproportion of substances which form destructible nature. Hence, nothing is permanent until all disproportions and dissonances are eradicated, so that all remains in harmony. The incorrect conception regarding spirit and matter is one of the principal causes which prevent many verities of faith from shining in their true luster. That is why I am here. Spirit is a substance, an essence, an absolute reality. Hence, its properties are indestructibility, uniformity, penetration, indivisibility, and continuity. Matter is not a substance. It is an aggregate. Hence, it is destructible, divisible, and subject to change. I do not disagree. The metaphysical world is one really existing, perfectly pure and indestructible, whose center we call Jesus Christ, and whose inhabitants are known by the names of angels and spirits, as well as demons and ghosts. The physical world is that of phenomena, and it possesses no absolute truth. All that we call truth here is but relative, the shadow and phenomena only of truth. And just so you know, every time I see the word phenomena, I hear in my voice, phenomena. Our reason here borrows all its ideas from the senses. Hence, they are lifeless and dead. We draw everything from external objectivity, and our reason is like an ape who imitates what nature shows him outwardly. Thus, the light of senses is the principle of our earthly reason, sensuality the motive for our will, tending, therefore, to animal wants and their satisfaction. It is true, however, that we feel higher motives imperative, but up to the present we do not know either where to seek or where to find. I am laying that out, hopefully. In this world, everything is corruptible. It is useless to seek here for a pure principle of reason and morality, or motive for the will. Yes, you should seek God for that. This must be sought for in a more exalted world, there, where all is pure and indestructible, where there reigns a being all wisdom and all love. Thus, the world neither can nor will become happy until this real being can be received by humanity in full and become its all in all. Man, dear brothers, is composed of indestructible and metaphysical substance, as well as of material and destructible substance, but in such a manner that the indestructible and eternal, as it were, is, as it were, imprisoned in the destructible manner. And again, this is not a prison. like imprisoned here as a slightly different context than before, but it is still like you are here incorporated spiritually inside of the temple voluntarily. That is an important distinction. It really is. Thus, two contradictory natures are comprehended in the same man. The destructible substance enchains us to the sensible, and the other seeks to deliver us from those chains and to raise us to the spiritual. Hence, the incessant combat between good and evil. The fundamental cause of human corruption is to be found in the corruptible matter from which man is formed, for this gross matter oppresses the action of the transcendental and spiritual principle, and is the true cause, hence, of the blindness of our understanding and the errors of our inclinations. The fragility of a china vessel depends upon the clay from which it is formed. The most beautiful form that clay of any sort is able to receive must always remain fragile, because the matter of which it is formed is also fragile. Thus do men remain likewise frail, notwithstanding all our external culture. When we examine the causes of the obstacles keeping the natural man in such deep abasement, they are found in the grossness of the matter in which the spiritual part is, as it were, buried and bound. That is mostly true. The inflexibility of fibers, the immovability of temperaments that would wish to obey the refined stimulation of the spirit are, as it were, the material chains which bind them, preventing in us the action of the sublime functions of which the spirit is capable. The nerves and fluidity of the brain can only yield us rough and obscure notions derived from phenomena, and not from truth in the things themselves. And as we cannot, by the strength of our thinking powers alone, have sufficient balance to oppose representations strong enough to counteract the violence of external sensation, the result is that we are governed by our sensations, and the voice of reason, which speaks softly internally, is deafened by the tumultuous noise of the elements which keep our mechanism going. And that is mostly true. It is true that reason strains to raise itself above this uproar and wishes to decide the combat, seeking to restore order by the light and force of its judgment, but its actions is only like the rays of the sun, constantly hidden by clouds. The grossness of all the matter in which material man consists, and the tissue of the whole edifice of his nature, is the cause of that disinclination which holds the soul in continual imperfection. The heaviness of our thinking power in general is consequent upon dependence upon gross and unyielding matter. This same matter, forming the true bonds of the flesh, is the true source of all error and vice. That's a little bit less true. Reason, which should be an absolute legislator, is continually slave to sensuality, which raises itself as regent and, governing the reason that is drooping in chains, follows its own desires. This truth has been felt for long, and it has always been taught that reason should be sole legislator. It should govern the will and never be governed itself. Great and small feel this truth, but no sooner is it desired to put into execution than the animal will vanquishes reason, and then the reason subjugates the animal will. Thus in every man the victory and defeat are alternate. Hence this power and counter-power are the cause of this perpetual oscillation between good and evil, or the true and the false. If man wishes to be led to the true in such manner that we can only act after the laws of reason, and from the purified will, it is absolutely necessary to constitute the pure reason sovereign in man. But how can this be done when the matter out of which many men is formed is more or less brutal, divisible, and corruptible? Hence, misery, illness, poverty, death, want, prejudices, errors, and vices, the necessary consequence of the limitation of the immortal spirit in the bonds of brute and corruptible matter. Sensuality is bound to rule if reason be fettered. That is in part true. The overcoming of these temptations, which you have agreed to, are only available if you are consciously deciding to do so, right? You are not going to be overcoming violence if you are not attempting to overcome violence. So, yes, it is a necessary consequence of the limitation of the immortal spirit in the bonds of brute incorruptible matter, right? If you fetter your reason, then you are not able to use it. And society plays a great part in that, right? Society has convinced our youth that education is not a good thing, right? That was part of me growing up, and it is even more so now. Anybody who desired intelligence was a nerd and was to be made fun of. That was part of this, right? It is the same for the various other things in your life. Yes, friends and brothers, it is such as the general fate of man, and as this state of things is propagated from man to man, it may, in all justice, be called the hereditary corruption of man. We observe, in general, that the powers of reason act upon the heart, but in relation only to the specific constitution of the matter of which man is made. Thus it is extremely remarkable, when we think, that the sun vivifies the animal matter according to the measure of the distance from this terrestrial body, that it makes it suitable to the functions of animal economy, but at 1 degree more or less raised from spiritual influence. Diversity of nations, their properties with regard to climate, the variety of character, passions, manners, prejudices, and customs, even their virtues and vices, depend entirely upon the specific constitution of the matter from which they are formed, and in which the imprisoned spirit operates accordingly. Man's capacity for culture is modified to this constitution, likewise his science, which can only affect people as far as there is matter present. Susceptible to such modification, and in this modification consists the capacity for culture suitable to such people, which suitability depends partly upon climate and partly on descent. Generally, we find in each zone man much the same everywhere, weak and sensual, wise just in so far as his physical matter allows reason to triumph over the sensuous, or foolish if the sensuous obtains mastery over the more or less fettered spirit. In this lies the evil and the good, specially belonging to each nation, as well as to each isolated individual. We find in the world at large the same corruption inherent in the matter from which man is made, only under various forms and modifications. From the lowest animal condition of savage nature, man rises to the idea of the social state, primarily through his wants and desires, strength and cunning, qualities especially animal, inherently his, as the animal develops thence gradually into other forms. The modifications of these fundamental animal tendencies are endless, and the highest degree to which human culture has acquired by the world, has attained, up to the present, has not carried things further than the putting of a finer polish on the substance of its animal instincts. This means to say we are raised from the rank of the brute to that of the refined animal. But this period was necessary, because on its accomplishment begins a new era. When the animal instincts being fully developed, there commences the stage of evolution of the more elevated desires towards light and reason. Jesus Christ has written in our hearts in exceedingly beautiful words this great truth, that man must seek in his common clay for the cause of all his sorrows. When he said, "The best man, he who strives the most to arrive at truth, sins 7 times a day," he wished to say by this, in the man of the finest organization, the 7 powers of the Spirit are still closed, therefore the 7 sensuous actions surmount them daily after their respective fashions. There are 7 virtues and 7 vices, if you are unaware, and you are meant to balance them. Thus, the best man is exposed to error and passions. The best man is weak and sinful. The best man is not a free man, and therefore exempt from pain and trouble. The best man is subject to sickness and death. And why? Because all of these are the natural, inevitable consequences incidental to the qualities of the corrupt matter of which he is formed. That is a bit of a rationalization, right? This is meant to be a temporary existence, and therefore it is going to corrupt. Therefore, there could be no hope of higher happiness for humanity so long as this corruptible and material forms the principal substantial part of his being. That's not true. I have higher happiness. I am still corruptible. I am still here in the material form, but yet I have contentment. Like, it may not seem evident, but I do. Like, I enjoy what I do here. I really do. There are things which still annoy me, true, but for the most part, I am happy. Like, for real. Like, not even just putting it on. Like, I really am at a point of happiness in my life. Even though there are still things I desire, there are still trials to go through, there are still problems in my life, I'm still happy. The impossibility of mankind to transport itself to true perfection is a despairing thought, but at the same time, one full of consolation, because in consequence of this radical impossibility, and because of it, a more exalted and perfect being than man permitted himself to be clothed in this mortal and destructible envelope, in order to make the mortal immortal, and the destructible indestructible, and in this object is to be sought the true reason for the incarnation of Jesus Christ. Now, mankind cannot transport itself. I don't even claim that that is true. I say fully that God is responsible, right? I have sought God in a very real way. I have expressed the dedication required, prayer, fasting, and meditation, through practice over time, and I have transported myself. Right? Not of myself, but through God. Am I truly perfect? No. I'm not even trying to intimate that. But the thought that it is a despairing thought, once again, is that victim mentality. At the same time, it's full of consolation. The radical impossibility, and because of it, a more exalted and perfect being than man, permitted himself to be clothed in this mortal and destructible envelope. I believe that is true, but I don't believe it was just a man. I believe it was every single one, male and female, so man is the general humanity. I believe that men permitted themselves to be clothed in the mortal, right? That is what I have been purporting all the way through this. This is no different than that. To make the mortal immortal? No. Right? You are not meant to seek immortality here. You've already got it. Your soul is eternal. You are somewhere, you're going somewhere. That is a truth. You are supposed to seek correction. You are supposed to seek the true path. That is your goal. Doesn't matter who you are. You can choose to not, but that is the goal. That is the objective for everyone. You will return to the immortal. You were never meant to be indestructible. You were not meant to be immortal. You are not even meant to seek it, right? You're not meant to search for the sorcerer's stone to transmute into the elixir of life. The elixir of life as a metaphor, yes. That is the understanding, the elixir that is the human soul, occupying the temple in an effective manner. That is the transmutation of alchemy. This is different, right? This is the consideration of, I want to be eternal. This is, I'm taking blood pressure medicine starting at 40 for 60 years so that I can live to be 100. Well, why? Why? That's not to say to quit taking your medicines, right? That's not what I'm saying. You should be living a life where the medicines are less necessary. You should be living a healthy life where those things aren't required to keep your blood flowing correctly. That is a possibility. That is something you can achieve. But it is easier to take the medicines, so people do it. But a lot of people are doing it to try to extend their life, not to have a better one now. Again, a subtle distinction, but one that needs to be made. There are people who are looking into cryogenics to try to freeze themselves for some miraculous repair on the other side so that they can live forever. No, you're doing it wrong. There are people who are trying to incorporate themselves into mechanical beings so that they can live forever. No, you are doing it wrong. You are not meant to live forever. You are here for a predetermined amount of time, and you don't know what it is. Every day can be the last one. Every breath can be the last one, and you are meant to live as though it is. That is the true reason for the incarnation of humanity. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the actual substantial word by which all is made, that is a misinterpretation, fall back to Genesis, and which existed from the beginning. Jesus Christ, the wisdom of God working in everything, was as the center of paradise, of the world, and of light. He was the only real organism by which alone divine strength could be communicated. And this organism is of immortal and pure nature, that indestructible substance which gives new life and raises all things to happiness and perfection. This pure, incorruptible substance is the purer element in which spiritual man lived. That is the Holy Spirit, and that is separate from the incarnation that was Jesus. From this perfect element, which God only can inhabit, and the substance out of which the first man was formed, from it was the first man separated by the fall. We've already talked about that. By the partaking of the tree of good and evil. We haven't talked about that, right? Of the mixture, the good and corruptible principle with the bad and corruptible one. He was self-poisoned, so that his immortal essence retreated interiorly, and the mortal, pressing forward, clothed him externally. Thus, then, disappeared immortality, happiness, and life, and mortality and death were the results of this change. No. You were, in the best interpretation of this, right? The tree of good and evil was the knowledge that good and evil exists. Prior to that, man lived in an existence of animal nature, merely existing. Doing what needed to be done, but that doesn't mean that you were immortal. Through the partaking of the tree of good and evil, you came the knowledge that good and evil were a thing, and therefore decisions had to be made. That is what Eden represented. The tree of life, the temptation, those things are metaphors at best for the fact that there is a consciousness of good and evil, right? The tree of knowledge of good and evil. The sin was acquiring the knowledge, because now you are responsible for the choices. These dogs are not responsible for their choices. My cat's not responsible for her choices. The birds aren't responsible for choices. They are in small measure because it can lead to their extinction, yes, but overall, no, they just do what is natural to them. The dogs have a better understanding than the birds do, yes, but they're not us. They don't have a clear distinction between good and evil, right? You do. You know that killing another man is a bad thing. You know that. Regardless of whether you were raised that way or not, you will feel that. The tree was the understanding that that existed. Prior to that, you could kill with impunity because it was no thing. There was no conscience attached. The tree is the understanding. The fall is the voluntary incarnation. You are taking the understanding and clothing yourself here in the mortal for the experience of the mortal, right? The tree of life, that is restricted from you because you are not meant to be immortal. It's couched in language in Genesis, but that is the gist of it. If you would like a further explanation, I have gone through Genesis quite extensively. Many men cannot understand the idea of the tree of good and evil. This tree was, however, the product of movable but central matter, in which destructibility had somewhat the superiority over the indestructible. The premature use of this fruit was that which poisoned Adam. Now that is a self-insertion. God said, do not eat it. He did not say you'll be able to eat it later. Robbing him of his immortality and enveloping him in his material and mortal clay. No, he gave him the awareness thereof. And thenceforward he fell a prey to the elements which originally he governed. That is a supposition taken from the text, yes, but it is still a supposition. This unhappy event was, however, the reason why immortal wisdom, the pure metaphysical element, clothed itself with a mortal body and voluntarily sacrificed himself so that the interior powers could penetrate into the center of the destruction and could then ferment gradually, changing the mortal to the immortal. Thus, when it came about quite naturally that immortal man became subject to mortality through the enjoyment of mortal matter, it also happened quite naturally that mortal man could only recover his former dignity through the enjoyment of immortal matter. That is a logic exercise that does not necessarily bear truth. All passes naturally and simply under God's reign, yes. But in order to understand this simplicity, it is requisite to have pure ideas of God, of nature, and of man. And if the sublimest truth of faith are still, for us, wrapped in impenetrable obscurity, the reason for this is because we have set up to the present dissolved the connection between God, nature, and man. Yes, that is indeed why you do not understand. That is indeed why for you it is wrapped in impenetrable obscurity. That is indeed because you have dissolved the connection between God, nature, and man. How have you done that? Jesus Christ has spoken to his most intimate friends, when he was still on the earth, of the grand mystery of regeneration. But all that he said was obscured to them. They could not then receive it. Thus the development of these great truths was reserved for latter days, for it is the greatest and last mystery of religion, in which all others retreat as to a unity. Regeneration is no other than dissolution of and a release from this impure and corruptible matter which enchains our immortal essence, plunging into deathly sleep its obstructed vital force. Therefore, there must necessarily be a real method to eradicate this poisonous ferment which breeds so much suffering for us and thereby to liberate the obstructed vitality. There is, however, no other means to find this excepting by religion. Not true. For religion, looked at scientifically, being the doctrine which proclaims the reunion with God, it must of necessity show us how to arrive at this reunion. The Infinite Integrations playlist will take you step by step. Is not Jesus the life-giving intelligence? No. He gives us the principal object of the Bible and of all the desires, hopes, and efforts of the Christians. Did he give you the Bible? Is that what happened? Have we not received from our Lord and Master, while still he walked with his disciples, the profundest solutions of the most hidden truths? Did not our Lord and Master, when he was with them in his glorified body, after his resurrection, give them the highest revelation with regard to his person? And did he not lead them still more deeply into central knowledge of truth? Did he? Is that what happened? Is that the evidence that we have now? Will he not realize that which he said in his sacerdotal prayer, St. John 17:22-23, and the glory which thou hast given to me I have given unto them, that they may be one, even as we are one, I in them and they in me, that they may be perfected into one. That is the introduction of the intermediary, yes, but it was not a necessity. You can go straight to the one, even as we are one. As the disciples of the Lord could not comprehend this great mystery of the new and last alliance, Jesus Christ transmitted it to the latter days of the future now arriving, when he said, "And the glory which thou hast given me I have given unto them, that they may be one, even as we are one," with the one. St. John 17:22. This alliance is called the union of peace. It is then that the law of God will be engraven in the hearts of our hearts. We shall all know the Lord, and we shall be his people, and he will be our God. That is where I am at. That is what I am trying to impart to you, and hopefully doing it effectively. Probably not, but hopefully. All is already prepared for this actual possession of God, this union with God really possible here below. And the holy element, the efficacious medicine for humanity, is revealed by God's Spirit. The table of the Lord is ready, and everyone is invited. The true bread of angels is prepared. You can go get it. Prayer, fasting, and meditation. The holiness and the greatness of the mystery, which contains within itself every mystery here, obliges us to be silent, and we are not permitted to speak more than concerning its effects. I am not restricted there. The corruptible and destructible is destroyed and replaced by the incorruptible and by the indestructible. The inner sensorium opens and links us onto the spiritual world. We are enlightened by wisdom, led by truth, and nourished with the torch of love. Unimagined strength develops in us wherewith to vanquish the world, the flesh, and the devil. Our whole being is renewed and made suitable for the actual dwelling place of the Spirit of God. Command over nature, intercourse with the upper worlds, and delight of visible or intercourse with the Lord are granted also. That is where I am. The hoodwink of ignorance falls from our eyes, the bonds of sensuality break, and we rejoice in the liberty of God's children. We have told you the chiefest and most important fact. If your heart, having the thirst for truth, has laid hold on the pure ideas that you have gathered from all this, and have received in its entirety the grandeur and blessedness of the thing itself as object of desire, we will tell you further. May the glory of the Lord and the renewing of your whole being be meanwhile the highest of your hopes. And so ends letter 4. Next up will be letter 5. Hopefully I have brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those beliefs. It is not something I do intentionally, but it is not something that I apologize for. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I have to relay the truth. The truth is that you can do this without the intervention of Jesus Christ. You can go to the tree of knowledge and partake. You can, through fasting, prayer, and meditation, achieve mastery over nature. Will it be immediate? Absolutely not. Will it be total? Probably not. I don't restrict the possibility that it is entirely possible because I know that there are things that you can do external. I don't at all discount the things internal because I have done the things internal. I have walked the things that he is talking about, and I've done it without Jesus. I've done it directly to God, right? I've gone directly to God and asked for forgiveness. I've gone directly to God and asked him to guide my ways. I ask God every single day to correct me if I am wrong, and yet he continues to improve my life. So I have to assume I am doing it correctly. The fundamental thing to bring from anything that I ever teach you, anything that we ever expound upon, any study that we do, the overarching thing is God loves you. God wants you to learn. God will punish you if you don't, but he loves you. He is a father, and he requires nobody between you and him. Nothing. The only thing required for you to get forgiveness is to seek it. There doesn't need to be a name. There doesn't need to be a ceremony. There doesn't have to be a specific prayer. You can scream it and feel it in your heart, and it still gets done. It doesn't have to be particular words. It is the desire of your heart that is read by God. That is the part he gets. It's not necessarily the things you speak. You speaking creates your existence, right? You receive the divine inspiration, top and bottom. You direct it through the third eye and the sacral. You amplify it through your throat and your stomach, and you emanate it from your heart. Those are all parts of the process. And so there is some understanding involved. There are steps that you have to take. It is not an intrinsic natural thing that will just happen. But if you take the steps, it will be revealed to you. In the same way that it was revealed to me. That has to be my assumption. I am not special. I am merely willing to serve. That is the difference between me and the control systems, in large part. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain open. If there is something that you would like to see me discuss, leave it in the links down below. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not manifesting money. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.